Hi, I'm Father Michael Orsi. I'm your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which brings you the big G for the gospel of Jesus Christ and the little g, all the good things that people do, putting that gospel of life into action. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is our first program since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And it's certainly a time for us to celebrate. Two reasons. Number one, celebrate the fact that the Constitution has been upheld and observed. We were able to overturn a bad law. Number two, it's also a time to celebrate the fact that many babies' lives will be spared in many states here in the United States of America. So it's a blessed time. But there's also a battle ahead of us. And I want everyone to pay very close attention to what I'm going to tell you right now. Number one, yes, we have won a victory. But number two, we still have to change people's minds and people's hearts, because some people still believe that they have a right to an abortion. And even though some states will be banning abortion or limiting abortion, there are other states that abortion is unlimited, even to the point of birth. So we have a lot of work to do. Two things I think are important. Number one, I want you all to be very, very supportive of women who are having children, and maybe under other circumstances they would have considered an abortion. But now perhaps they're going to allow the baby to be born. We must support them financially and emotionally. Secondly, we must make the adoption option more available for many, many people. So yes, a time to celebrate, a time for us to be thankful to Almighty God for what He has done to overturn a bad law, but also to remind us that we still have tremendous responsibility toward the unborn and toward their mothers. Now, today, we're going to talk to a beautiful young lady in a place called Arizona. You've heard of Arizona. And she runs an organization called, Abortion Survivors Network. Abortion Survivors Network. Now, what does that mean? She's going to explain this to us, because when I read a little bit about her organization, I couldn't believe that she was one of the almost victims of an abortion. Her name is Denisha Workizer, and she is the president of this organization, but also, as I said, herself a survivor of 2 abortion attempts. Holy cow, this is unbelievable. Denisha, welcome to the program, and thank you so much for being with us to tell us your story, because it's fantastic. You know, folks, excuse me, you know how I am. I'm looking at Denisha. She's beautiful, beautiful young lady. She has 4 children. And to think the world almost lost her. The world almost lost her. But thank God we have you here with us today. So could you begin to tell us your story? What happened, and how did you find out about what almost happened to you?
Oh, Father, thank you so much for having me today. Yes, it is a little shocking, right? I have so many people, when they hear my story, the first thing they say is that a thing? Is that a thing that this happens? And it is a thing. I am blessed to be the healing program coordinator for the Abortion Survivors Network. And so we get to work with survivors all over the world. And we have today, as of today, we have connected with almost 600 survivors worldwide in 22 different countries. So the beautiful thing is, I'm not alone. You might hear my story today and think, okay, that's an anomaly, right? Like, this doesn't really happen. Babies don't survive abortions, but they do. And so my personal story, when I was 42 years old, I found out my story. So talk about kind of a midlife crisis, right? I felt led to ask my biological father. We had just reconnected 2 years prior. And so 2 years goes by, and the year that I decided to be inquisitive and be curious about my story was the year that New York passed the law to allow abortion up to 9 months of pregnancy. I'd worked in ministry, but I had not had a foot in the pro-life world at all. But what I did know was just hearing that that law had come to pass, that was not okay with me. And so I began to kind of process, what does that mean? And up to 9 months, and why aren't we doing something about this? And so it was during that time when I really felt prompted to contact my biological dad and ask him if my mom ever considered having an abortion with me.
Okay, so you were living with your biological mother. You were raised by a biological mother, but you didn't really know your father. Okay, but what prompted you to go to him? Why didn't you ever ask your mother these questions?
That's a great question. My mom passed away in 2001. So she passed away when I was 23. And Father, to be really honest with you, when I was kind of lamenting to my husband about this New York law, and the thought popped in my head, I wonder if my mom ever considered having an abortion with me. I was born in 1976, so this is post Roe v. Wade, right? And it was California. She had an 18-year-old daughter. She had no children in between. She was not married. She was very big into the business world. She was going through some trouble with the law at the time. I mean, it was really not a great time to have a baby. She was 34 years old. I mean, if you look at her circumstances said that it wasn't a great time to have a baby. However, we know that, God can provide in any circumstance. But so the thought popped in my head. This was 4 years ago now. And the thought pops in my head, I wonder if my mom considered having an abortion. So the first thought that I had was, but she didn't. And I moved on. And then about 10 minutes later, my husband and I are still talking, and a thought popped in my head again. Ask your dad if your mom ever considered having an abortion with you. And I thought, that is such a silly question. Like, why would you? And I thought, but she didn't. And I even said to my husband, do you think my mom considered having an abortion with me? And he said, oh, honey, I'm sure she considered it, but she didn't. And then some time went by that same day, and we were leaving a pool area where my family and I were having this conversation. I was having that conversation with my husband, and we go to leave the pool area. And I mean, it was as if my heart just stopped and said, stop now. Text your dad and ask him if your mom ever considered having an abortion with you. So I believe that was the Lord prompting me to text him. And I stepped away from the gate. I told my family I would join them in a little bit. I sat down on a lawn chair and I began to count the cost. I wish I could say I immediately texted my dad, because I really did feel like this was a prompting from the Lord. And I sat there and I began to count the cost. I had a new relationship with my father. I had just seen him 2 years prior to this moment, after 30 years of not seeing him.
Wow. So you had been out of touch with him for a long time in your life, then you reconnect with him, and I suppose you had some kind of relationship that built up, but then you just texted him and said, hey, Dad, did mom ever consider having an abortion? I mean, wow. Yeah. Where did that come from, Wow.
Yeah. And it was very spontaneous, but I sat there and I thought, what if he never talks to me again? What if this pushes him away? And so I counted the cost, but I felt it so strong in my heart that I texted him. And honestly, I didn't know why I was asking, except for I was trying to follow my heart and what I really felt led to do. So I texted my dad. As soon as I hit send, the burden just relieved off of my shoulders. I mean, I went on with my day. And sometimes when you like post something or you send a hard text, you might check your phone a bunch of times and like, did they respond? I didn't. It was very strange. I sent this text and I said, Dad, I have a weird question for you. I said, did mom ever consider having an abortion with me? I said, I don't know why I want to know, but this New York law, is really disturbing to me. And so about 3 hours later, we were standing in a restaurant and my phone buzzes and my dad responds back and he says, you don't know, do you? She didn't just consider having one, she had one. And later found out in my conversation with my dad that my mom found out she was pregnant in 1975. And it was in October. In November, she had decided to terminate the pregnancy. So she took the chemical abortion pills. And that is what, Father, that is what we can get by mail now.
Denisha is talking about the New York abortion law, and that is one of the most terrible laws in the whole country, insofar as you can go till birth and still have an abortion in New York. So we talked earlier about, even though Roe v. Wade is overturned, still there are certain states, because it goes back to the states. Now, it's a federalist system. The states will make the decisions. New York has a very, very, very evil, liberal abortion law, and therefore people can still, in New York, or go to New York and procure an abortion. Denisha also says something else, and this is about chemical abortion, and I'm told that about 60% of abortions are now performed chemically, and that these abortifacients can indeed be shipped from state to state, and nobody would really know the difference. So yeah, Denisha, yeah, it's frightening that New York ruling, something that, jarred something in you because it's so horrendous. But then your father reports, yeah, she tried a chemical abortion, correct?
Yes.
And then again, what's the next step?
Yeah, so when she took those 4 white pills, which is the chemical abortion, the first 2 should have stopped my heart from beating, and the second 2 white pills should have forced her body to expel me. Well, her body showed some signs that had worked, but a month later, in December of 1975, she found out she was still pregnant with a viable baby. And so at that point, she went to the doctor and she had a D&C performed, which is where they remove anything left in the uterus, any tissue, and basically the baby, right? And so she had a D&C performed in December. And in February, to her surprise, she was still pregnant. At that point now, the law was that she was 4 to 5 months along, so she could not attempt another abortion at that time in 1976 now. So I was born full term in July of 1976.
You're tough. Surviving 2 abortions, a chemical and then a surgical abortion, and you survived. I mean, this is an amazing story. God has a purpose for you, and He's using you to instruct other people about abortion and the great loss that there is when somebody is aborted. You're a prime example of that. Okay, so then you are raised by your birth mother.
She was amazing. She really was. She was amazing. And she passed away when I was 23. And what breaks my heart is she passed away with that secret. She never sought healing, to my knowledge and to our family's knowledge. She raised me every day knowing that she had attempted to take my life before I was born. But she was an incredible, incredible, strong woman. Talk about a strong woman. She was a very strong woman. So yes, she raised me and did, I think, a pretty good job. And here we are now.
I mean, it sure sounds like she has done a good job. You're intelligent, you are articulate, you're a fine-looking woman, you have a husband, 4 children. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, God works in strange ways, and sometimes people do things that, well, God even works through some evil. And the evil of abortion, in the case of Denisha, was not something that God was going to let go to waste. So what I want to do now is we're going to come back to Denisha in just a few minutes, and we're going to ask you to pay attention to the important message that we have to give to you during this program today.
We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support.
And we're back. We have Denisha Workizer, well, I'm going to call you the president because I can't remember all these titles that you have of Abortion Survivors Network. And we talked to her about, how she found out that she survived two abortions, one chemical and the other one surgical, and how she was raised by her mother. And I want to talk to you also about your organization. You know, you said you have 600 people around the world that have connected with you to tell their stories. So can you tell us about how did this begin? Then you find out, oh my gosh, I'm really a survivor, and what am I going to do with it? What did you do with this knowledge, and how did your organization operate?
Well, I have to tell you, after I found out my story, the first thing you feel is shame. And the first thing you feel is that I had to be the only one that this had ever happened to. And Melissa Ohden founded the Abortion Survivors Network, and she had been serving survivors for years. And in 2019, she made it into an official nonprofit organization. And so in 2019, ironically, is when I found out my story. And so as soon as I found out, I had all these emotions. And the first being that I had to be the only abortion survivor. I mean, you don't hear about this, right? So one day my keyboard was calling me, kind of like warm chocolate chip cookies call you to the kitchen. And I sat down and I Googled, do babies survive abortion? And that is when I found the Abortion Survivors Network, and I met Melissa Ohden. And she is incredible. And I currently serve with her organization as the Healing Program Coordinator. So I get to work with survivors all over the world. Melissa has written a fantastic curriculum that is built just for survivors. So we are the only organization that serves abortion survivors.
Okay, talk to me about the curriculum. I mean, you have a curriculum that goes all over the world, and I guess it gets translated into many different languages too, I suppose, correct?
One day we hope for that. So far, we're just in English. However, we do Zoom meetings with survivors all over the world. So there are times where we use, Google to talk to different people, or we type out the messages. But in her curriculum, it is really incredible because we deal with rejection. We deal with the fact that, like, everything going on in the news right now feels very personal to survivors. And so we deal with the fact of, what do you do in a world that says you don't exist? We've been referred to in the past as the dreaded complication of abortion. A born alive baby is a dreaded complication. And, so we get to serve survivors in all of those emotions that come up when you find out that you have survived an abortion.
In the beginning, they'll tell their story. They'll get in touch with you and they'll tell their story. Is there a psychological component to this? How do you minister to them? They actually, I'm sure some of them need healing, or they might even have post-traumatic stress when you find out something like this. I mean, if I found out something like that, I mean, I'd be a mess. I mean, to tell you the truth.
Well, I'll tell you, I was. I was when I found out. And the first thing I did was, stomp into my counselor's office. And I said, what do I do with this? And she said, there's no place to put that, like in your, in your heart and in your mind. She said, there's no place to put this. Let's process. But Melissa's written a curriculum specifically for survivors. So it's my role to walk alongside these survivors as they go through healing. And it is every topic from shame, rejection, family. We look at all the different aspects. PTSD, as you mentioned. So many of us as survivors, we have similar health conditions. And it's just amazing to realize that you're not alone. There are many survivors. One of my friends in the network, she didn't find out she had any other survivors in the world with her until she was 47 years old. And she found out as a child that she'd survived an abortion. And we have people in the network from infants, where we serve their families, that have survived abortion, all the way up to 89 years old. So pre-Roe, we have survivors from pre-Roe, before it was legal even. So it's an amazing privilege to serve alongside Melissa and her team. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to just meet new survivors.
You brought something up about, and I'm not prying into your personal medical condition, but you said that a lot of you have medical issues also. Like, something like what? And are they similar? They go across the board? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, a lot of it we've noticed. We're seeing trends that, depending on the procedure that the person survived, that tends to lead to different issues physically. For instance, Melissa Oden, she survived a saline infusion abortion. And so she has different autoimmune issues. There's things that she struggles with that we noticed other people that have survived a saline infusion abortion, that they deal with those similar things. Many of us have autoimmune issues. Some of us have physical deformities that we struggle with, and disabilities. Many of us have nightmares. We have a very intense feeling of rejection. So there is, from psychological to physical, there's a lot of things that survivors that we can wrestle with and walk through in life.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there a spiritual component to this?
My belief is that yes, there is. We're standing in America, and we are fighting for the culture of life instead of a culture of death. And so I do believe that there is a spiritual component. We have research has shown us that trauma even though we don't have a memory. I've had people say, well, you don't have a memory of what happened to you in the womb, so why don't you just let it go? But that's actually not the case. Science shows us that our bodies remember trauma even from the womb, even the stress that mothers go through while they're carrying their child. And if you imagine that we were born into families who initially may have had a change of heart, but initially didn't want us. And so I do believe there's a lot of doors that get opened during that time spiritually that we end up walking out as well.
When you meet with other survivors, whether in person or via Zoom around the world, is there a prayer time? Do you say, let's pray together? Does that ever happen?
It does happen. We have a lot of survivors that are believers. And then we have some survivors that are not believers.
Wow, if I were a survivor, I would believe. I'd say, there's got to be a God up there. I mean, holy cow, look what you went through, and it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
It really is. It's amazing how many of us have a ministry background also, or in a field of helping. So that's interesting as well. But yes, we do have prayer time. And it's a beautiful opportunity. The hearts of survivors are incredible. I mean, if you would have said, do you have room in your life for, all these new friends and people who become like family to you, I would have said, oh, I'm really busy, I don't have time. But I can tell you that my fellow survivors have become some of my very closest friends. And it's a beautiful process to be able to serve survivors in 22 countries.
Magnificent. I'm very, very impressed with you, and certainly with you, and with your organization. Can you just tell us, how would people get in touch with you? We can run it across the screen, and if you just give us a website, we'd be very happy to put this out there for other people who maybe have had the same miracle in their life.
Absolutely. You can reach us at abortionsurvivors.org. And I will tell you, Father, since Friday, when Roe versus Wade was overturned, we have found 6 new survivors in just the last few days. So that is incredible. That is
absolutely fantastic. It's wonderful for me to be able to talk with you today, especially the post-Roe v. Wade era. I think that God is smiling upon us. He certainly smiled upon you. And I know that all of us are enriched, amazed, and blessed with this conversation that we've had today. I know you're for action. I'm for action. And I know all of you out there are too. God love you.
We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for Action for Life. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life. Hey gang, I know a lot of you sometimes can't watch all of our episodes of Action for Life. However, we have a solution for that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and search for Action for Life Florida. And you can catch up on all the shows, and guess what? Extra added bonus, you get to hear my weekly homily. So, YouTube and you make a fine couple. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life. We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for Action for Life. I'm for Action, and I hope you are too. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life. Hey gang, I know a lot of you sometimes can't watch all of our episodes of Action for Life. However, we have a solution for that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and search for Action for Life Florida. And you can catch up on all the shows, and guess what? Extra added bonus, you get to hear my weekly homily. So, YouTube and you make a fine couple. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life.